Have you ever wondered about the role of the brain in immune system dysfunction? Or how working with your thoughts and emotions can help with conditions like chronic inflammation, recurring infections, long COVID, Lyme disease, mast cell activation syndrome, autoimmunity, or even sensitivities to foods, chemicals, or environmental factors? Well, I'm Madeleine Lowry, a neural retraining specialist, and today we're going to talk about something that affects many people with chronic symptoms, but is often misunderstood. We're talking about immune system dysfunction, what it looks like, why it happens, and what the science of psychoneuroimmunology teaches us about the connection between the brain, stress, and immune health. But here's the key idea I want you to understand. The immune system does not operate independently of the brain. It is in constant communication with it. When people think of immune problems, they often think of getting sick frequently. But immune dysregulation can show up in many different ways, such as lingering viral or bacterial infections, recurrent viral activations, slow or delayed wound healing, mast cell activation syndrome, increased sensitivities to foods, chemicals, or environmental triggers, chronic inflammation, autoimmune conditions, and even increased vulnerability to precancerous and cancerous growths. Now, I want to be very clear here. Neural retraining does not replace medical care. When we say that there are mental and emotional factors behind these health conditions, it does not mean that you are responsible for causing them. However, biology is not separate from the nervous system, and that is where psychoneuroimmunology comes in. Psychoneuroimmunology is the scientific field that studies how our thoughts and emotions, our nervous system, and our immune system interact. Research over the last several decades has shown that chronic stress alters immune cell signaling. The brain communicates with immune cells through hormones and neurotransmitters. Inflammatory cytokines affect mood and cognition. And trauma and prolonged stress can shift immune balance. The nervous system and the immune system are not separate. They are partners. And when the brain perceives threat, the immune system acts accordingly. Short-term stress can be adaptive, but chronic unresolved stress creates chronic immune activation or suppression, and both patterns can create problems. Let's talk about how chronic stress disrupts immunity. When the brain perceives danger, whether that danger is physical, infectious, or emotional or mental, it activates the stress response. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or what we call the HPA axis, engages, cortisol rises, sympathetic nervous system activity increases. In the short term, this can sharpen immune response, but when stress is ongoing, two things often happen. Immune suppression, which means increased susceptibility to infections, delayed healing, or poor viral control, or immune overactivation, which leads to chronic inflammation, heightened sensitivities, and autoimmune processes. In other words, the immune system becomes dysregulated, not because it's broken, but because it's responding to a nervous system that remains in threat mode. And here's where this becomes especially important for people with chronic symptoms. Many stress responses are not conscious. You may not feel stressed. You may simply feel wired but tired, reactive, on edge, overwhelmed, overly responsible, or constantly scanning for what might go wrong. The subconscious mind runs long-standing threat patterns based on early experiences, trauma, conditioning, and identity. And if your nervous system learned early that the world is unsafe, or that you must overperform to survive, it may remain in subtle fight or flight activation for decades. And the immune system listens every single day. Research shows that early adversity and chronic stress can alter inflammatory markers and immune gene expression. Why? Because the brain encodes experiences as memory networks. Those networks are not just psychological, they are physiological. When a memory network associated with a threat is activated, even subtly, the stress response activates, and immune signaling shifts. You may not consciously connect your current autoimmune flare, viral reactivation, or inflammatory symptoms with an emotional trigger, but at the nervous system level, associations are constantly being made. That is why people sometimes notice flares after conflict, symptom spikes after loss or grief, infections during prolonged overwhelm, or increased sensitivities during stressful periods. The body is not malfunctioning, it is responding. So where does brain retraining fit? As I said before, neural retraining is not a substitute for medical care. It does not replace oncology, and it does not eliminate the need for appropriate treatment. But what it does is to address the nervous system component of immune dysregulation, so that all those other treatments or modalities can work more effectively. Through advanced neural retraining, we work with the subconscious memory networks that maintain the chronic threat patterns. In a session, a client focuses on a recent experience of a pattern, perhaps anxiety, people-pleasing, overwhelm, or even a flare of symptoms. And that focus activates the associated memory network. In a meditative, safe state, we direct the subconscious to observe and neutralize the emotional charge attached to those memories. And as the emotional charge weakens, the threat perception decreases. As threat perception decreases, the nervous system shifts. And as the nervous system shifts, immune signaling can normalize. This is the principle of psychoneuroimmunology in action. When the nervous system moves out of chronic threat mode, clients may report fewer viral reactivations, faster recovery from infections, reduced inflammatory symptoms, improved tolerance to foods or environmental factors, better wound healing, more stable energy. Again, this is not magic. This is physiologic. When cortisol rhythms stabilize and sympathetic overdrive decreases, immune balance improves. The body reallocates resources away from survival mode and toward repair. Now, a special word about cancer. This is an area that is very delicate, and I want to speak very clearly. Psychoneuroimmunology research does show that stress and immune suppression can influence tumor surveillance, the immune system's ability to identify and remove abnormal cells. But this does not mean that stress alone causes cancer. And it absolutely does not mean that someone is responsible for their diagnosis. Cancer is complex and multifactorial. However, supporting nervous system regulation during treatment may support immune resilience, quality of life, and the pace of recovery. Neural retraining can be an adjunctive support and an important one, but it is not a replacement for medical treatment. Now, if you have been dealing with immune dysfunction, you may be feeling betrayed by your body. You may be feeling like your immune system is attacking you, or failing you, or overreacting. But what if your immune system has simply been responding to a nervous system that has not felt safe? What if the problem is not that your body is defective, but that it has been defending you for too long? When we reduce subconscious threat signaling, we reduce one of the major drivers of immune dysregulation, and that opens up the space for healing. So in closing, I want you to understand that immune dysfunction is not purely psychological. It is not purely biological. It is neurobiological. It lives at the intersection of brain, stress, and immunity. Psychoneuroimmunology gives us the scientific framework. Neural retraining gives us a practical tool. If you've been addressing your immune health from the outside with diet, supplements, and medications, those may still be important. But it may also be time to ask, what is my nervous system communicating to my immune system every day? Because when the brain shifts out of chronic threat mode, the immune system often follows. If this conversation resonated with you, you can learn more about this work at tcneuralretraining.com. Please follow the podcast, rate it, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for listening, and remember, taking care of your nervous system is essential to health and to healing. Content of this podcast copyright 2026 by Twin Cities Neural Retraining. Music by Barbara Ben.